Hello, everyone. As you're coming in today, I want to thank you for joining us. My name is Marche. I'm the webinar director here at Advice Chaser. Before we introduce our guest and get started, I do need to do a little bit of legal housekeeping. Advice Chaser, the host of this webinar, is not a registered investment advisor. We cannot and do not give financial advice. Today's presentation is for educational purposes only and cannot be considered advice for any person's individual situation. Advice Chaser regularly hosts informative webinars such as this one, featuring a variety of knowledgeable professionals, many of whom are licensed advisors. Any opinions, ideas, jokes, or principles expressed by presenters are their own and, however true, funny, or interesting, are not endorsed by Advice Chaser. Please do not act on the information you hear today without consulting a qualified financial professional. Well, we are thrilled to bring you today's educational presentation. A couple of housekeeping items. Attendees are muted, but we do encourage you to ask questions using the chat box. The presenter will answer those queries during or after the webinar today as appropriate. And I know our presenter has said that she is happy to answer questions during the presentation, as well as during our question and answer period at the end. If you ask a question in the chat box and we're not able to get to it, go ahead and leave your phone number and email address as well, and we will make sure someone reaches out to you to make sure that that question is addressed. We want this experience to be as educational as possible. So again, please don't hesitate to ask for clarification or expansion of the material. Well, I'm happy to introduce you to today's presenter, Deborah W. Ellis. As a certified financial planner, Deborah has the education, life experience, and knowledge of changes in the financial landscape of the 21st century to help clients in identifying and attaining their financial goals. Deborah earned her MBA in investments, finance, and economics from Pepperdine University, and her bachelor's degree in art from the University of California, Los Angeles. She completed requirements to sit for the Certified Financial Planner exam at Colorado College of Financial Planning, where she also earned her Charter Retirement Planning Counselor designation. As an author and a speaker, she wants to motivate clients to understand what they are invested in and why, as well as empower them to make the financial choices that will move them in the direction they want to go. She is the author of 2 books, Your Money and You, and her most recent one, from which some of this information on today's webinar is from. It's called Women and Wealth. And Deborah, we're so excited to have you here. I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to you.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. I'm certainly grateful for this event. The last 2 years of COVID have been very challenging on many, many levels. And as you can see from my image online and the picture that you saw, I was one of the many women who had the opportunity to let their natural color grow in through COVID. So yes, it's still me, and I'm happy to be here to share a lot of what I've learned about money over the years. Women could fall into 3 groups. Now, I'm not talking about on how they deal with their money. I'm not talking about spending. We're all very good with writing checks, using credit cards, going shopping. I grew up in a generation where the motto was, when the going gets tough, the tough go shopping. So that's not exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how much money do you have? A lot or a little doesn't matter. It's just, what is your money doing right now? Do you know where your money is? How do you acquire your money? Do you work for a salary? Do you have a regular income? Do you own a business? Do you have some other source of regular income? It's seldom that we can barter for things to survive. It's not very often that one of us will have a chicken that lays eggs and we can trade an egg for milk from someone who owns a cow. Money is survival in this day and age. we have to have money no matter how much or little we have to eat, to feed our families, to make sure we have shelter. And certainly money is critical for anything beyond basic survival. So what is your relationship with money? A lot of women fall into three categories. One is they're totally reliant on someone else to understand their money. Either their husband takes care of it, they have a financial advisor, they just assume that it'll always be taken care of. Someone has a bigger plan in mind. And as long as that's the case, they're okay. Unless at some point that changes and it's like a huge awakening. The husband passes away and they don't know where anything is. They get a divorce and they don't realize what they have access to or don't. The next one is many women do handle money. They may or may not have a lot of assets, they might, but they do their own investing, the family investing. They do the savings, they do whatever kind of budget they make, but they don't really understand where their money is or what they're doing with it. A lot of us had employers that offered us 401 retirement contribution plans, and they'd give us different funds that we could choose from, and we just randomly pick them. But we didn't really have a strategy or know why we were picking them or know what they were for or what the difference was. So even though there are women who are managing their money, they really don't understand it. Actually, it's not their first priority. They're just trying to survive and get through, and they're doing it because that's what they have to do. Then there's the third group. These are the savvy women, financially savvy. They may or may not be making a lot of money, but they study investments. They study where their money is going. They have it all budgeted and they have a plan. They know what they want to do with it. And if they don't understand something, they figure it out. They find a way to find out. When I was growing, most women fall into group 1 or 2, by the way, if you didn't get that already. But when I was growing up, money was much less sophisticated or complicated. My mother had a checkbook. My father had a Diners Club card. I remember my mom teaching me how to write a check. I don't think she ever told me how to balance a checkbook. Department stores gave you credit cards, but there was never huge interest payments. They wanted you to come into the store. That's why they gave them to you. And the mark of excellent credit was to qualify for a Sears credit card.
We did have a question here about those 3 different types. What if you're kind of a mix of all 3?
So you're on the right path, and I say keep studying, keep learning as much as you can. You can't learn it overnight. I mean, you know, I've been investing my money for 40 years, and the first 20 or the first 10 was like, I realized, wow, maybe I should understand business better, because this is just kind of luck. You know, how did I do this? And it's become so complicated and sophisticated over the years. Now anyone can buy one stock, anyone can open an account. You know, 30, 40 years ago when I was starting, you couldn't. You just couldn't do that. But in order to discern what's important, what's the first thing you have to do? Where do we start? And the first and most important thing to do is to understand your relationship with money and your financial persona. And a lot of this is embedded in us when we're quite young. So my question to you is, what are your beliefs about money? Look at them and see if you can discern what they are. What did your parents teach you? I mean, it's really interesting to think back. How were you raised? Did you think you were wealthy? Did you think you were poor? Did you feel like money was always a struggle? Did your parents warn you about spending too much, or just like throw money at anything that they could and hope that would fix it? Do you think money is evil? Do you think money is good? As a kid, I remember my stepmom saying, you can never have enough money. You can never be thin enough or rich enough. That was the phrase. So the question is, what are your inner voices telling you about money? Don't trust the markets, don't do this, do that. I'll tell you the one thing that's a pet peeve is credit cards are not an alternate source of income. This day and age, you can charge anything and pay it off slowly, but we'll get to credit card fees. So the one thing that's really important is, as a woman, when it comes to money, you want to encourage your maternal instincts. Just like a mother who knows where her younger children are, what they're doing at any moment. Do you know where your money is? Do you know what it's doing right now? Do you know why it's there? Most women don't. Most people don't. It's not even a gender thing. So it's really, really empowers you if you can understand what your money is doing and why, where it's invested, why it's invested. That's why financial literacy is so, so important for all women. And I encourage all of you to learn everything you can because we're dependent on it now. So when I was a child, inflation and interest rates were very, very stable. When you were looking at long-term goals, you didn't really consider inflation. But now you don't consider inflation and you're in a lot of trouble. So are you shaping your children's perceptions and relationships with the money? What do you think you're teaching them? What are your attitudes towards money and what are you passing off to them? As we engage our maternal instincts, as with children, if you nurture it, it will grow to something beyond your wildest expectations. Think of the parent who makes a point of always knowing where her young children are and what they're doing. Again, think of where your money is right now and where is it going and what is it doing?
So I have a question here. You talked about what your thoughts are about money and what your attitudes are about money. Is there an ideal? If you think you can never have enough money, is that, contrast that with maybe a more healthier approach?
It's so complex because these messages, from your kid, when you're kids, it's interesting because my aunt, my father's sister, always lived on less than she made, saved money, invested. She's the one who taught me investing. My dad, she was a school teacher. She made a very modest living, and yet she still lived on less than she made and invested. My dad made large sums of money, never saved, never invested. In the end, it was my aunt who had the assets, not my father. And when I look at them, they were so totally opposite. You don't want to be either extreme. You need to have a healthy respect for money. You need to know what you're doing with it, where it's going, but you don't want to be afraid of it. You want to be what we call cash comfortable. You want to be able to live on less than you have coming in and pay yourself first. How much, when you're paying your bills, the first bill should be you. What are you putting away for your savings, your retirement, your long-term goals? And when you're making your budget, that should be top of the budget. That's not the one choice that should be scrimped on. You might not have to go to McDonald's for lunch every day, but you do want to save. So it's a habit, it's a mindset, it's a skill set. It's not something you can do overnight, especially if you aren't raised with that mentality. And most of us aren't, especially in this generation. It's like credit cards are an alternate source of income for so many people. Well, I have this much credit, I can buy it. And you don't really think about the long-term goals. The other thing that's very important is we don't have pensions now. Very few companies offer pensions. My grandparents knew they could work for 20 years at one company and retire and have an income for life. Now the possibility of working for one company for 20 years is very slim. And even if you do, the probabilities that they are offering pensions now is slim to none. What they do offer is 401k defined contributions. But the defined contribution, the title means the company can decide how much they want to contribute. But what it really means is you're totally accountable and responsible for your future long-term goals.
Mm.
You put in as much from your paycheck as you want, which means if you don't have money when you retire, it's not because you didn't get a pension, it's because you didn't save it. And that's such a different mindset than other generations grew up with.
Yeah.
So different.
Well, let's move on to talking about, you talked a little bit about the importance of financial literacy for women. Can we talk about this?
Yeah, it's really important for women to empower themselves. And financial empowerment is huge. If you know where your money is and what it's doing, you can do a lot of different things. You can move on. It's like you understand how each financial decision is affecting every other financial decision. Think of driving a car. When you're driving a car, you can look in the rearview mirror occasionally, see what's happening, but basically you're looking ahead. You're looking down at the dashboard. You can see how fast you're going. You can see if you step on the gas and go faster, you can see the difference it makes. If you slow down or step on the brakes, it not only changes how fast you're going, but you can see it's going to take you longer to get to where you're going. I mean, when you're driving in your car, you're not looking behind you to see how fast you're going or looking at the dashboard. It's really important to have some sort of a plan in place even if it changes on a regular basis. You can change it whenever you want. But the idea of having a plan is that when things change, you know they've changed and you can adjust and you can adjust it. You can make changes to the plan. That's the word. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting analogy. I'd never thought about that before, that we're actually driving a car with our money already. And so many of us are driving, maybe looking at our phone instead.
And stepping on the gas and wondering, where did it all go? Yeah. Yeah. I just, it's really interesting to watch people these days. So what if you want to, a lot of women are part of the sandwich generation. They're raising kids and helping parents, and they have to manage the money. They want their parents to have a nice lifestyle. They also want to save for their own retirement, and they want to send the kids to college. How do you juggle all that? I mean, you have to be really good at that. And then there are the women who want to plan for retirement, and retirement in this day and age is no longer what it used to be. You're not looking to retire and sit on the couch for 5 years and watch TV or play with the grandkids. It's usually making a transition of your lifestyle, either starting your own company, just getting out of the workforce, traveling, doing things you've always wanted to do. But the idea is, as I was saying before with pensions, we're totally responsible for our own finances now. So if you have any intentions of stopping working before you die, you really need to plan many, many years ahead. And I do have to preface it with, it's never too late. Wherever you are right now, this is the perfect time. You can't say, oh, I'm too late. I can't do it now, so I'm done. But wherever you are right now, it's just the later you start, the harder it is. The more you have to understand what your options are and what your constraints are. So a lot of women are able to start their own business and do that. But what is the pain of not taking charge of your finances? Well, there's a very good likelihood you won't have what you need when you need it. So many women I know now thought they could be retired by now and realize they don't have enough money to live the lifestyle they want. They have to work longer. And they're concerned about actually where the money will come from if they do stop working. How are they going to get it? And yes, we can plan for that. We can work with that. As women, we can, make a pretty good idea of where we're going and what we're doing. And yes, things change and things come up. Even like when you're driving your car, a deer could run out, or stop in the headlights. But you slam on the brakes. You know how to mitigate the risk. You know how to accommodate and work around it. Now, if you aren't looking ahead of you and the deer comes out, you just crash. You don't have time to step on the brakes or to make any changes or do anything. And that's the biggest problem with not having some sort of plan. So by the time you realize you're in deep trouble, you're past the point of no return.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the common easy things that people could do to take charge of their finances?
Pay yourself first. Pay yourself first. We don't call it a budget. We call it a spending plan, because it's not about restricting yourself. It's about understanding where you're spending your money and looking at it from a perspective of what are your priorities. I often have women write a list of what's most important to them, their values, their priorities. Say you want to save up for a new house. You want a down payment, or you want to send the kids to college, or you're hoping to retire at a certain point in your life. Then just keep track of everything you spend, anywhere cash goes for a couple weeks. It doesn't matter if you're writing a check or putting it on a credit card or paying cash, notate it and then look at it and see how that aligns with what is important to you. I mean, if it's important to save money for a down payment for a home, and you don't like McDonald's, but you're eating there for lunch every day. I don't use Starbucks anymore, by the way. But you're doing something that isn't really important to you, but you realize you're spending a lot of money on it. Change it. Don't do that.
So you're saying,
yeah, go ahead.
So you're saying, if you write down those goals, seeing how those goals and then what you're actually spending on, seeing if they match up.
Yeah, and you'll be so surprised because I have a good story. I did a lot of consulting for the Los Angeles Air Force Base, and this was not just one client. There were people who would come in and they didn't understand where their money was going. And I said, well, write it down. He says, I'm so modest. I can't take such good care of it. I don't get it. It turns out a lot of men are taking care of their girlfriends and don't realize that the girlfriends have an open access to their checking accounts. And they're happy to do it. It's not that they mind it at all. It's just that he didn't understand where it was going. He just hadn't tracked it, hadn't looked at it. So they have a conversation and they resolve it. But it's interesting the kinds of things you'll discover if you look at it. You maybe be real surprised. You might not, but it's worth a shot. And if you think about what really is important to you financially and write a list down or, get your head around it and see whether those are in line, that's very helpful too.
Well, that I think goes right into this next part about the pleasure of taking charge of your finances.
Oh, it's so empowering. I can tell you from my experience and experience with a lot of women I know, suddenly you don't have to ask permission from your husband, from your accountant, from your anyone. You know where your money is, you know what it's doing, and you know why it's doing it. And you know what your preferences are and what your priorities are and what your goals are. The other thing is this sense of being cash comfortable, knowing that you have more money every month, every day, than it's costing you to live, so that you can buy whatever you want if you want to buy it, because the money's there. If you want to go out and buy a new car, you've got, $50,000 available. You can do that. But that's only if you know where your money is and you're managing it and you're living within your means, which is a really, really difficult concept for a lot of people. And I get that. We have so much freedom and so much fun and access to so much that you really, really have to step back and say, what's really important to me? Where do I want to be? Who am I? And how was I raised? What did my parents teach me? And what isn't really true anymore? And what works for me and what doesn't?
And you said there's a lot of, you can get a lot of positive energy from controlling your finances and being aware of it. What do you think that is?
That sense of knowing who you are, where you are, and not feeling under someone else's control, that you're in control now. And that's just, it's so enlightening. It's so empowering is the only word I know. Suddenly you don't feel victimized. You don't feel trapped. You didn't get taken, you still get taken advantage of. People do what they do, but it isn't like you didn't know what was happening. How come I didn't know that all my money was going here? How come I have no money today? How come this and this and this? And you have control over it. And that's in every aspect of your life, not just money, but you want to empower yourself. You want to be in control. We don't believe in victimology, being a victim. There are no victims. You need to free yourself and be your own woman.
Can you talk a little bit about what stops people from taking charge of their finances?
Fear.
What did you say again?
Fear.
Fear. Okay.
There's so much information out there. How do you know? How do you know what to look at? How do you know what's relevant and what's not? And also a lot of internal messages that we got growing up or in our young adult life, events or things that happened that I'm never doing that again. I lost so much money in the stock market. I'm never putting money back in individual stocks. And they lost money, yes, but they didn't understand what they were invested in and why. And they didn't have a strategy for how they were investing. So the fear factor is big. The lazy, it's just not a habit. It's not a mindset. They don't think that this is important. Money is what it is. That's maybe how they were raised or what the beliefs that they took on, that I can't control it. Someone else is always going to take my money or give me money. I don't know when I'm getting paid, or I'm getting paid, but I have so many bills, I don't know what they are. I just have to get by as best I can. But once that awareness happens, there's no excuse. It's like, whoa, I can do this. I really can do this. And you can, absolutely.
Let's go ahead and move on.
So money is becoming so complex. So that means financial literacy is more complex. And inflation is changing the way we perceive of everything. If the underlying value of a company remains the same, but the cost of buying the company increases, you're losing value. You're losing your purchasing power. So that's something we've been noticing, like right now, when Apple or some of the large companies are growing like at 20%. but the cost of their shares are growing at 30%, you're putting in more money for less value. So you're losing value. That's partly inflation, but that's partly one of the problems with what's happening in the world right now. It's so volatile. Everything is so strange. Like I was talking about when we were growing up, my mother had a checkbook, my father had a Diners Club card. We didn't have all these different financial products that were available. You had life insurance, fire insurance. You had they didn't have money market accounts. You had a savings account that paid interest. You bought bonds. Now there's so many different ways of investing your money. And how do you understand them all? You can't. I mean, it's a constant thing. I do it professionally, so it's a constant job. So you really have to know what kinds of questions to ask, have someone who's on the same page as you, know that they're got your best interests at heart, that they're not selling you something to make a dollar. It's to discern the noise from the actual information is a challenge for all of us. So the idea of investing in volatile markets, the reason you need to do that now is because of inflation and interest rates are so low. Even if they raise them slightly, the problem is if you put $100 under your mattress and leave it there for 20, 25 years, you will have your $100. Yay, you preserved your wealth. Problem is, at 3% inflation, in 24 years, it's going to cost you $200 to buy what you can buy today for $100. So that means you're losing purchasing power very, very safely, which makes it important that you consider taking some kind of investment risk. Now that depends, on what your tolerances are and what you're doing. Now, if you're Jeff Bezos and have gazillion dollars and the market goes down 50%, you're going to have half a gazillion dollars and you're not going to care. But if you're not in that range, if losing a large portion of your money, losing 50, what do you call it? Having $100 and only having half of that of value in 20 years, you need to consider investing in something that's going to help you keep up with inflation. And right now, there's a lot of different products out there that can help you do that. But the things that you're afraid of, you can never control the market. What we try and do is mitigate risk. I got to tell you, that's why I went back to school. I was going to control the market. I knew that if I got my MBA and I understood business, I could figure out how to invest and never lose money. And then I thought, okay, that didn't work. Maybe if I get my CFP, then I'll really be able to make a difference in that. And during this whole period, the market's going up and down, up and down, up and down. Finally, I came to the acceptance that you can mitigate risk. You can diversify, you can pick different assets, you can go different strategies. You can come up with the strategy that if your specific investments go down a certain amount, that's when you sell it. Or it goes up a certain amount, you take your profit and run. There's tax considerations and all kinds of strategies that go with it. But I can mitigate risk. You can mitigate risk. You can't control it. It's not going to happen. But you really do need to understand how it works so that you can accept the risk and know where your tolerances are and keep up with inflation.
Okay, so someone who's just starting out in investing, or maybe they have, let's say, a 401k or a Roth IRA, and they don't understand where that's invested. Like, what are some of the key vehicles of investing that they need to study about?
The difference between stocks and bonds and funds. I can discuss that.
Sure,
Okay.
Go ahead. I think that'd be great.
With a stock, you own part of the company, a small percentage, but you own the company. You're buying it. If the stock goes down, the money you invested goes down. When you buy a bond, you're loaning money to a company. You can, you'll pay, say, $10,000 for a bond. They promise you a certain interest. It's simple interest. You get your annual interest every year for the life of the bond, and then you get your principal back. And if for any reason it goes bankrupt or there's an issue with it, you are a creditor of record, meaning you will get something back, as opposed to a stock. The stock goes down, you have no hold on their assets or anything like that. Now there are lots of different, bonds are usually considered fixed income. It used to be when bonds were paying 4 and 5 and 6%, you know, people could live on that. That was your retirement income. You'd invest in bonds and just live on the income from the bonds. Now at 0.2% or, you know, 1%, or a 10-year, I think is 2%, something like that. Inflation is 3%, so you're losing money every day. So you need to look at alternatives. But so you have fixed income, you have investing in companies or projects, and then they have what they call funds. Now there's exchange traded funds and mutual funds. They're both funds. The idea of a fund is it's a basket of stocks. John C. Bogle, Vanguard, who started Vanguard, said, why look for a needle in a haystack when you can just buy the haystack? Makes sense. So, you know, you can buy an S&P index fund, which has 500 stocks in it. Now, no one stock is going to tank the fund, but if the market goes down, 75% of the stocks go down. Okay, so the fund goes down. And then there's all these other parameters about the risks with funds and not funds. But if you don't understand what you're investing in, buying index funds is really an option, because whatever the market does, you'll do if they're well, you know, managed. Exchange traded funds have lower fees. Mutual funds are managed and you're paying a manager to manage them. And the probabilities of anyone beating the market is low. That's why a lot of people just put it into index funds. They don't have to think about it. They don't want to think about it. And my contention is you still need to think about it. Why are you in an S&P index as opposed to a healthcare index, as opposed to energy? You know, because now they have funds for everything, anything, any sector, any kinds of anything that you can think of. So you still need to have some awareness of what you're investing in and why. But like, employers have to vet all the funds that they give you, and they all have to be fairly conservative, not risky. So you can pick what you want, but I know when we were working at the Air Force, the military has something called the thrift savings plan for members of the military. And that you can either get like bonds, government bonds, or common stocks, or international stocks. There's like 5 different brackets you can get. But the thing is, originally many years ago, you are automatically put into bonds because that was considered the safest. Now you're not. You're put into what they call a life cycle fund, where they start out more aggressive and they make it more and more conservative as you get closer and closer to retirement. A lot of employers have funds like that. They call them life cycle funds. The other thing is you really need to understand if you're investing in common stocks, funds, or in bonds, or in interest-bearing funds, and they will tell you all that. And the HR department will go over it ad nauseum and explain it to you. But you are welcome to call a separate independent advisor to get an opinion of what you have, and they can do an analysis and give you their thoughts. Now, then you have to take these thoughts and compare it with what your HR department said and decide what's best for you. But you have a lot of options out there and a lot of opportunity and a lot of information available to become more educated.
Well, let's go ahead and move on. Thank you so much for answering that question.
I love this one. Einstein called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. And I love it because it is. The difference between simple interest and compound interest, just in case you're not all up on that. Simple interest, if you have $100 and you're making 5% a year, simple interest, the first year you get $5 and you have $105. The second year you get your $5 and you have $110. The third year you get your $5 and you have $115. In 20 years, it'll double. You'll have $200, $5 a year. Compound interest, on the other hand, is the first year you have your $100, you're getting 5% compound interest. The first year you get your $5, just like simple interest. But the second year you get 5% on your $105. So you have 100. So the second year you have, let's see, second year you have 100, you get 100, you get $5.25 because you're getting 5% on $105. The third year you get your 5% on your $110.25. And now you have 115.76. Well, it snowballs as you go further. And in 14 and a half years, you've doubled your money compared to the 20 years with simple inflation. Now, the catch with this is credit cards companies figured this out. So they will charge you, the interest that they charge you is compounded. And they will figure it out on like a 30, 60-day running average. So if you're just paying the minimum payment over the course of the credit card, you're going to pay them a lot more than you ever borrowed. Not a good choice. It's costing you huge amounts of money because every month when you leave money in debt, they're charging you interest on the total amount. And the one thing that always made me crazy is if you've been running a debt for a couple months, okay? And then you decide to pay it in full. You pay it in full, but they'll still go back 30 days for the running daily average. So that even though you've paid it in full, you still have interest payments for a period of time. You'll still have to pay them. So they've got it wired. I mean, they've got it down. That's part of the reason credit cards are not an alternate source of income.
I had a really great question here. Does any financial institution offer compound interest?
They all do, yes. I mean, when you're any CD, any of those things are compound interest, unless specifically it's not, but generally it is. What's not compound is if you buy a bond at 5%, you're going to get your $5, every year. It's not compound. But mortgages that you're paying interest or compound interest, you have it in a savings account, it's generally compound interest. The problem right now is the interest rates are so low that you wouldn't notice, a 0.5% on whatever it is, plus your 0.5% isn't going to generate much more income. But most institutions that I'm aware of do compound it. And they do disclose it right away. It is or it isn't compounded. That's the APR that's the compounded interest either of the income or the cost.
I guess Yeah, I guess what this probably reveals is that maybe this question reveals that they're already invested in something that is compound interest, but the interest rate is so low that it's hard to see any of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, 20 years out, you might see it, but yeah. And compound interest brings up another red flag for me, and that's averages. Because mutual funds or a lot of different investment vehicles will say, oh, this has grown 6% average over the last 10 years. Okay. There was a time in my life where I thought, wow, that means in 20 years, I'm going to double my money, whatever. Okay. Whoops. Average does not mean it goes up that amount every year. Average means it goes up 10%, down 4%, whatever, and over the time period, it averages that. The trick to that is timing of the markets. The ups and downs make a big difference. If you lose 10%, it has to grow 11% to break even. Okay, if the market goes down, I'm just using 50% because it's an easy number, it has to go up 100%. So if you have $100 and suddenly you have $50, if it grows, if it doubles in value, you're back to where you started. You still haven't made any money. So that gives you a large mountain to climb to make money. So the order of the markets counts. People who retire and the markets go up do better over time, and they start withdrawing funds. And they do better over time than people who start withdrawing, just taking distributions, and the market goes down and then it goes back up. You really need to be prepared to compensate for that, to balance for that. I mean, one of the strategies are to have enough cash so that you don't need to take it out of your account. You don't need to start taking distributions right away. That's one thing that's important and interesting. So the thing about compound interest is the time value of money. You put something in an account for 20 years, a Roth IRA that you can take out without any tax implications, you're gonna do really well. That's why I really encourage young people, everyone who has an income and they are eligible to open a Roth IRA, to open it, because even if it's modestly invested, just the time value of the money is going to make a big difference.
Well, this maybe go right into this next chart from your book here.
Well, emotional investing. One of my goals, one of my hopes for all of you is you get past emotional investing into what we call aware enthusiasm. My words come a little slow. We have a lot of issues with people are watching the market go up, like right now. Oh, look at it, it's going so high. Look at how high it is. Okay, I've been putting it off too long. I now have to buy. I'm going to buy in at X dollars. They don't know what the company is worth. They don't know what's going on. They don't know if it's undervalued or overvalued, but the market's going up. They want to be in on the ride. Okay, fine. Okay, it goes up a little bit. Oh yeah, look at how wonderful we did. We're doing great. And then it starts coming down. And they think, oh, it'll go back up. They start getting anxious. No, 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 it's just a blip. It'll go back up. It'll go back up. They get scared. They get desperate. They start panicking. Finally, they say, that's it. I'm out. I'm selling everything. I'm never buying in the market again. So now they've lost a lot of money and they're just totally devastated. Well, the market goes up again. Then what happens? Either they're totally out of the market or they get back into the same cycle. The hope, my goal, is for people, women, to be educated enough about market movement, what it does, the volatility, how to diversify, how to mitigate the risk, so that when the cycle starts again, you know where you are, you know what you're invested in, you know why. You're buying it at a decent price. And if it goes down, you know the company's still a good company and there's not a reason to sell it because it'll come back up. Or there's a problem with the company and you know to sell it when there's a first problem. So I love this chart because it's a roller coaster ride. And it is, and sometimes I talk about day traders. One of the things I say, long-term investing, you want to look at long-term investing. I didn't go over the buckets and all that kind of stuff, but long-term investing, because there are day traders. I mean, you hear things, oh, good, make your fortune, buy this, it's gone up, 20% in the last week. You can make money. You have to have an iron gut to do that and buy and sell and buy and sell. Plus you're going to pay taxes on everything as income. But I couldn't do it. It's too stressful because you just don't know. I mean, maybe if you're an insider or you're with the company and you have some knowledge or something, you can't tell anyone, you can't share it. But people, they're gamblers out there and they make a lot of money, but they lose a lot of money. And the goal, the game, is just to make more than they lose. It's not necessarily to make a bundle overnight. It's to make more than they lose. So if you're ever tempted by that, just be clear what you're doing. Okay. Okay. So I can see we're getting a little close on time here, but these are important questions you can ask your advisor. Now, there are two basic types of legal requirements for advisors. First of all, an advisor, anyone can be a financial advisor. There's no prerequisites to call yourself a financial advisor. If you want to say you're a financial advisor, you are. You can be paid as a fiduciary, which means your client's interest is first, or you can be paid under the suitability standard. These are legal standards on how you're regulated. A fiduciary gets no incentives or commissions or fees from anyone other than the client. Suitability, which many advisors are, and it isn't a bad thing. All advisors are getting paid. You're paying them one way or the other. How do you want to pay them? The catch is that if you're suitability, you have to be very comfortable with the advisor that they're looking out for your best interest, because legally, if they have two options to recommend to you and one pays them more money, that's what they can recommend. They don't have any obligation not to. The other thing is a lot of the companies have their own proprietary funds or products that the company says you need to the agents, you need to sell this to the advisor. This is what we're selling. So there's a slight conflict of interest. But again, you're paying one way or the other. And if you buy certain things because the companies are paying commissions, you're going to get a little different income from it because the companies, so you're paying it one way or the other. But that isn't the worst thing in the world. You just really need to be aware of how your advisor is paid. You need to ask. And you want to ask them, what's your area of expertise? Do you deal with stocks, or some advisors only deal with exchange traded funds. They think that's the best option. Some deal with individual stocks, some deal with annuities, some want to give you fixed income. You just really need to be on the same page that what their expertise is, what their bias is what you're interested in. And who's their ideal client? Do they really want to deal with retired people? Do they really want to deal with young entrepreneurs just getting started, families? who are trying to save up for retirement and college and their parents. And what services will the advisor be providing? Will they talk to you on a regular basis? Will they review your portfolios? Are they going to help you going forward? Is this a one-shot deal where they're going to sell you something and walk away? And how often will you meet with the advisor going forward? And will they be available for questions? When and how often can you reach them? Those are the key questions you really need to discuss with an advisor before you decide to work with them. Any questions on that?
No, we can go on to the next part.
So it's really important to take control, make steps towards controlling your financial life and your financial future. Well, I say it's important. A lot of people it isn't important to. It makes a big difference in your life. It will empower you. Every woman, every family, every investment decision is unique. Every investment decision, every financial decision affects every other financial decision in your life. A financial advisor can help you make those steps, take those steps and help you figure out where you want to go, help you evaluate what your goals are, what's important and what's not. But this isn't something you can't start the process on your own. You just need to take the time to look at your priorities. Think carefully about what's important to you. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? Write it down. They say that writing stuff down makes a huge difference in whether or not it gets done. And then if you want to talk to an advisor, talk to more than one, talk to several. Find out who is the most aligned with what your beliefs are and what your goals are and what your situation is.
Well, we're going to go ahead and open it up for a couple questions. We might go a little bit over the top of the hour, but that's okay. I want to make sure we have some time to address questions. And this is a great one. Can you talk a little bit about setting up annuities? And let's say that you're age 60. We had a question about annuities.
Annuities are very, very interesting. The old school annuities were considered very expensive. There's always a cost for guarantees, of course. But there's several different kinds of annuities you can get where you put all the money in and then you start taking an immediate draw. You save up over a couple of years and don't take it right away. But the one thing I really want to share with everyone is there are now annuities that are taken out of the commission wrapper, which will cost you a little less and pay you a little more. And you need to research that before you go pay, high fees for annuities. Annuities can be very expensive, and if you have a pension, if you're 65 and you have a pension, that is an annuity. So you want to consider having some as fixed income, like an annuity or a pension, but you want to be able to have something that can grow with inflation. Because the problem with an annuity, if it's fixed, some of them aren't. They have some really great new ones out there. But again, you have to do your homework or talk to a couple different advisors and do check out the option for RIAs, registered investment advisors are working with companies. They're fee only, so they can't charge commission. So there are now companies that take it out of the commission wrapper, and so the client gets a little better deal on it. So you can look into that. But if you have a certain amount of assets and you're scared of the markets and you want guaranteed income, annuity is the only thing I know that's guaranteed. It's expensive. You really have to look at how much of your fees is coming out of it. And I did run into someone who had an annuity that even if they took all but the last dollar out in their lifetime, the beneficiary got it's like a life insurance policy. They got a survivor benefit. So those are out there too. thing you want to understand is where the fees are coming from, how they're calculated, and the costs. Does that answer?
Yeah, well, they had asked a little bit about specific companies. We can't endorse any specific product or company, but where would they go to research companies that would offer annuities?
Look at their credit rating. Like, what are the credit rating companies? Fitch, or you want to see their credit ratings, and you want to see the illustrations. But remember that the illustrations are the illustrations. You really need to, you want to talk to an independent advisor who isn't just captive. Can I, like certain companies, which I guess I don't want to name, if you work for that company, you have to sell their products. So you cannot advise a client about other products that are out there. So you want to make sure you've got someone that can look at the full range of products out there. And more important than any of that is knows your specific situation, because there's so many variables with an annuity. Do you want income right now? Do you want income in 10 years? Is it for a spouse to have income? Do you want it to grow? What is the purpose of it? And how does that fit into your lifestyle and the rest of the money that you've got?
Oh, so you're saying they also need to look at, their entire financial plan and
Yeah.
see how the annuity would fit into that.
Yeah, because you're locking up your money, and you can't. And the first, with a lot of them, the first 5 or 6 years, there's huge penalties to take it out. Now, with some of the newer ones that are, commission free, maybe you have to keep it a year, not as long. But the other thing is once it starts annuitizing, you can't, you're done, you're stuck. Whatever money you're getting is what you're getting. Whatever the agreement is what it is. You can't change it. So you really, really want to make sure that that's going to cover you with inflation and all that kind of stuff.
Right. We have another couple of questions, and then we're going to end here. You said pay yourself first. Can you talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of that? Can you give an example of how that looks in your checking account?
When you're making a spending plan, okay, the first list on the item is, call it your retirement, call it a savings account, call it a separate place to put the money. But if you do what your priorities are first, and then your spending plan starts with paying yourself first for whatever your goals are, retirement, a new home, then 10% or $10, doesn't matter how much or how little. You can pay yourself $1 a week. Just get into the habit and the mindset of paying yourself first. And if you haven't been doing that and you're really running tight on money, start with $1 a week. I used to say 50 cents, but inflation is just, if you can do $5, $10 a week, if you're young really and aren't, making very little money, it doesn't matter how much, just an amount that gets you in the mindset and the habit of saving, of putting money away. And then once you've saved up a certain amount, then you can start looking at investment alternatives, how to do that, where to go from there. But start with opening the account. And the thing is, right now, if that's your long-term goal, you can open up, if you have an income, you can open up a retirement account. The catch with retirement accounts is you put the money in there, you can't get it till you're 59 and a half. So you don't want a retirement account unless you really, that's what it's for, especially if you're young. But if you start when you're young, by the time you retire, you'll be well situated. You can also go to any brokerage account and open one and start, put any minimal amount of money and put money into that until you saved enough to actually invest. You don't have to invest right away. You can start putting money into that. And that way you can take it out if you need it, but you don't have access to it. Always have an emergency fund. 3 to 6 months if you have a stable income. If you're an entrepreneur or don't have a stable income, it's variable, figure a year. That's just of your basic minimal expenses. So if it costs you $5,000 a month to pay your mortgage, basic food, utilities, gas for your car, go to work, have $40,000 cash sitting there that you don't touch. And if you need to take it out because your car breaks down or you need a new refrigerator, you replenish it as soon as possible. And then if for some reason you're out of work for a couple of weeks, you're not going to sweat it. You have to wait that week until your unemployment kicks in, and unemployment isn't going to pay your expenses. You're not scared. You're not worried about it. You can sleep at night because you've got that set up. Also, then you can look at, if you have kids, do you have life insurance? Have you made arrangements for, God forbid, something should happen to you? How are they being taken care of? If you have a mortgage and you have a spouse and you're young, and you've got another 25 years on the mortgage, if something happens to the breadwinners, how's that taken care of? That's what insurance is for. And insurance can be used to help for college and things like that, but that's not the main point of it. Insurance is to help mitigate the risk, to help offset risk, to share the risk so you don't have the full burden.
That's about all the time we have for questions. I want to thank Deborah. Thank you so much for being here. I want to thank our attendees for being here. Look for a link to the replay of this event in your email inbox in the next day or so, and you're welcome to share that with your friends or family. On behalf of Advice Chaser, we want to thank the organizations that have made this webinar possible today. And here in Advice Chaser, we're all about helping you find a financial advisor who is a great fit for your life and your financial questions. Our matching service is free to you, and every one of our advisor partners has committed to offer a free initial consultation to anyone we introduce them to. Find out more by going to advicechaser.com and clicking on the link to find an advisor. Once again, from Advice Chaser, thank you so much for coming, and we will see you at another webinar very soon. Goodbye, everyone.
Everyone.